Hello, everyone, and welcome to another special broadcast from The Review. My name is Marco Torres, and I'll be the host of today's review. This is on Happs, the network of now. We just came off a broadcast going off of the siege on the capital of the U.S., pretty much taken over by extreme pro-Trump supporters in trying to turn over the entire Democratic Union, pretty much, from what we saw all day long. Recently, though, breaking news has shown that the Capitol has been taken back under control and that the Senate has gone back into session for the GOP voting on whether or not the Electoral College votes should be overthrown or not. And that will be something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on, and we will also be giving that news out when it happens. But for now, though, the big news for today, which was supposed to be the big news, was that John Ossoff won his Senate seat. He beat Perdue in the battle, and it was extremely close. It was a nail biter situation that happened from literally early when the polls opened yesterday all the way to early this morning. It was going back and forth. The tide kept switching from, I think there were even at moments, it was 500 vote differences between the two. But it finally came down to Ossoff taking the lead and securing the seat for the Democrats just right after about 5 hour difference from when Warnock, or I think it was about 5-10 hour difference from when Warnock was named the winner against Kelly Loeffler in his battle against for that Senate seat. Who I have today with me for this special interview is Brad Bailey. Brad Bailey is a reporter from Georgia, a freelance reporter, and he's been on the ground, boots on the ground, for the past 3 weeks now, interviewing, being a part of the campaigns, and getting the information that you need to be free and self-governing is what all civilians should be from us reporters. So, Brad, thank you so much for being here on the review.
It's great to be here, Marco. Thank you for having me.
Great. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about, John Ossoff, and pretty much no one could call whether or not he was going to win. I remember watching the New York Times needles, and it was constantly in the throat. Like it was just no one knew. It was a flip. So why did he win today?
Well, there's several reasons for that. Again, I think that a lot of people, first off, again, I saw myself firsthand how hard John Ossoff campaigned in Georgia. He went to areas that nobody really went to. He went to rural areas. He went to a lot of areas that a lot of politicians don't usually go to, and he really talked to the people. He talked to the people on the ground. He was always very accessible. To be honest, one of the most successful, if not, I think the most successful candidate that I had personally had access to, just in terms of openness and just in terms of the ability to be able to answer all different types of questions, and he never hesitated in that regard. So I think it's just the combination of weeks, months of just really hard work and really targeting those specific Georgia voters that really a lot of people had felt been overlooked and that needed a lot more attention paid to. Like as I said before, I believe that this race was won in Georgia's proverbially called black belt, the term of the swath of counties that have a predominant, well, not a predominant, but have a 40% African American population that are in the south and central part of the state. Booker T. Washington coined that term in the early 20th century because it was derived from former enslaved Americans who descendants stayed in those counties after the Civil War and were substantial and sizable populations. And that population sort of stretches from Texas, a broad swath from Texas all the way here to Georgia. And so the problem is, though, a lot of those populations have been disenfranchised. They don't really represent, their representation in those counties don't reflect the demographics that are there. And I think in Georgia, what has happened recently is that enfranchisement is starting to take place again. And that's through the work of people like the New Georgia Project. That's through the work of people like Stacey Abrams, of course, which is connected to the New Georgia Project. Her group is also called Fair Fight, in addition to voters like Black Voters Matter, with the head of it being Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright, again, who were just fantastic individuals, born and bred in Georgia, many of them, and who have really decided to really mobilize and get out in those rural areas, who happen to be 1 to 2 points higher and even better than the Democrats' November performance. And I think historically, and so of course you had places like Atlanta, which are urban blue, very deep blue counties. They did their job. They held their own, and they actually also outperformed in a lot of ways. Suburban voters, suburban white voters in affluent places like Cobb County, Gwinnett County, which are also changing and trending blue, did very well. But I really think it was those 1 to 2 points statewide in small little counties that may not be a big deal when you're talking about 1 or 2 counties, but when you're talking about 40 counties, those counties really made a large difference in swinging the vote toward the Democrats in this special election.
Brett, I think that was excellently said. And really quick, I just want to say hello to everyone who's attending our broadcast today. I see Peter and Pablo in the chat audience. Thanks for being here, guys. And then thank you for everyone else who's on Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Periscope, and any other Twitter and any other broadcast service or device that you're going through to see us. We can see your comments live, so feel free to ask myself or Brad any questions that you have about the Senate race, about what this means for the Democrats, Republicans, or just questions of why do you think the Republicans lost in this, or why the Democrats won. We're more than happy to answer that, and we're happy to go in depth on that as well. But moving forward, though, Brad, I'm pulling up on the screen now the vote count for Ossoff. So this is the current vote count taken from the New York Times just about a few minutes before this broadcast started. And we can see that Ossoff was declared the winner with a 50.4% margin, with David Perdue at 49.6. We can see that the vote difference, though, was about, it looks like 35,000, which is incredibly slim. My big question is, what is the likelihood that the Perdue group and the Republicans are going to request a recount and try and get to see if there's a way for Perdue to get ahead in a recount, if there was a mistake or an error somewhere along the line?
Well, I think that at this point, with just the fact that they have the seating of the new senators are going to have to take place literally immediately. They're going to ask for a recount, but I think at this point everybody knows who the winner is. I think a lot of people have to fight. They're fighting them for the general election, but I think for this election, I think both Loeffler and Perdue's team has now realized that this game is over. This game is over. They're going to ask for the recount, of course, as a matter of technicality. But I think at the end of the day, I think they all realize that it's not going to change anything, because any and all of the remaining votes, whether it be mail-in ballots or early votes that are not counted, are coming in from largely Democratic, deep blue bastions of the state. And that's it. That's really it. And I think they know that this is over. And again, I think that with David Perdue being quarantined the last few days in the campaign, it did not help any very much so. I think that the messaging, people did have sort of issues with Republican messaging, for the last few days. And instead of talking about policy, it was about how terrible the other side was. So I think those were challenges. Those were challenges, again, for that messaging. Plus, of course, the tension, of course, with national politics being sort of infused with state politics, with, of course, the general election still sort of looming over this special election. So I think those were big challenges. I think, though, that Republicans still will regroup in Georgia. I don't think, of course, it's going to go away anytime soon. And I think for the special election again, and sort of the Senate election again in 2 years, in addition to the governor's race in 2 years, I think by then the Georgia Republican Party will have regrouped quite significantly. And so it's going to be a very interesting race 2 years from now.
Oh, I really bet it will be. And actually, speaking of the race that's going to happen in 2 years, I'm bringing up on the screen now for everyone to see is Raphael Warnock's votes officially taken just as of just a little bit while ago, right before this broadcast started, on the New York Times page. And again, he also won 50.8% against Kelly Loeffler with 49.2%. And we can see here that the vote difference was a lot more exponential compared to with Ossoff and Perdue. With rough math, I would say that looks like almost 80,000, 70,000, just about like 75 around that mark. but I think for the Raphael Warnock's was also called a lot earlier than Ossoff's as well.
Yes,
I
yes.
think. What do you say? What do you? How big of a mark is this for Raphael Warnock to have won, especially being the Reverend for the late Martin Luther King Jr.'s church and the
Well,
community?
he is Reverend Raphael Warnock is the first African American senator from the state of Georgia. It has never happened before in the state. Again, a state where African Americans have been here for day one. And so that I think, and because of that, when you really do a deep dive into some of those counties, you will see that for the special election, and I know that Doug Collins, sort of did sort of divide the Republican ticket, but there were counties for the general election that Trump won, that Perdue won, but Warnock won, which was interesting. And you'll see that in smaller Georgia counties, again, in that black belt that I mentioned. And I think that was interesting because, again, he did really bring out black voters. And I think the historic nature of his vote brought out black voters because of that reason, because they wanted to see someone like them represented on a statewide election in Georgia. So, there was that discrepancy that I think that will still be studied with why Warnock had so many more votes than Ossoff did. I also think that Perdue's incumbency and the fact that he is really a lion of Republican politics in this state also made him probably receive a few more votes than Loeffler. So the debate is, what did Warnock do that was different than Ossoff, or what did Perdue do that was different than Loeffler? So again, that discussion will still be discussed. But again, the historic nature of his candidacy, who he is, whose pulpit he occupies, are all just fantastic things and a wonderful story that potentially could be the wonderful startup of a political career for years to come.
Definitely, Brad. Also, we actually have a clip of John Ossoff's acceptance speech that we're bringing up now for everyone who may have not have seen it already. This
Sure.
is a speech that talks a little bit about what he's pretty much what his plan is for moving forward, with a huge emphasis on the pandemic and how to protect the people within the state. Here it is now.
It is with humility that I thank the people of Georgia for electing me to serve you in the United States Senate. Thank you for the confidence and trust that you have placed in me. At this moment of crisis, as COVID-19 continues to ravage our state and our country, when hundreds of thousands have lost their lives, millions have lost livelihoods, Georgia families are having difficulty putting food on the table, fearing foreclosure or eviction, having difficulty making ends meet. Let's unite now to beat this virus and rush economic relief to the people of our state and to the American people. I will work in the U.S. Senate to support a robust public health response so that we can defeat this virus, putting Georgia's own Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the lead, trusting medical expertise, doctors and scientists to bring the tools to bear, the technology to bear, the ingenuity to bear, and the resources to bear necessary to stop the spread of this virus, to defeat it and to get our daily lives back, and to rush direct economic relief to people who need help right now. This campaign has been about health and jobs and justice for the people of this state, for all the people of this state. And they will be my guiding principles as I serve this state in the U.S. Senate, ensuring that every Georgian has great health care, no matter our wealth. Ensuring that we invest in an economic recovery that includes all communities, that rebuilds our state's infrastructure, that lays the foundations for prosperity in rural Georgia, suburban communities, and urban communities alike, and securing equal justice for all, following in the footsteps of leaders who have departed us in this last year, like Congressman John Lewis and C.T. Vivian. I want to thank the people of Georgia for participating in this election. Everybody who cast your ballot, everybody who put your faith and confidence in our democracy's capacity to deliver the representation that we deserve, whether you were for me or against me, I'll be for you in the U.S. Senate. I will serve all the people of the state. I will give everything I've got to ensuring that Georgia's interests are represented in the U.S. Senate. I want to thank all the volunteers who poured their hearts and souls into this campaign. I want to thank my family for their support and their patience. I want to thank my wonderful wife, Alicia, who as we speak is at the hospital, helping Georgia mothers deliver healthy babies, helping save lives. Let's emulate the spirit of courage and heroism of those who have given so much to the health response to this crisis. Of those who have given so much to the health response to this crisis, as we unite as a people to overcome this challenge of COVID-19 and to build a republic that lives up to our highest ideals of equality in God's eyes and equal justice under the law. Georgia, thank you so much for the confidence that you've placed in me. I am honored by your support, by your confidence, by your trust. And I will look forward to serving you in the United States Senate with integrity, with humility, with honor, and getting things done for the people of Georgia. Thank you so much.
So for those who are just joining in right now, that was just John Ossoff's acceptance speech for winning the Senate seat in Georgia over Perdue. One of the things I wanted to bring up, which was kind of a more of a somber fact, was the point of with Raphael Warnock's win just as of today, or I would say late last night, coming on the siege of the Capitol with how we saw very right extreme Confederate and it even seemed like Republican Trump supporters, taking over the Capitol and waving around Confederate flags on this eve of the night and of the day that Georgia has elected their very first black senator. I find that that's very disheartening, and as we all saw, it took away a lot of the momentum and a lot of the energy that was culminating within Georgia and within the rest of the country. And I was just going to ask you, Brad, what do you think about this, and how do you think the reactions are from people around the country, if not world, shifted from happy excitement to now this somewhat horrified, saddened-stricken grief that now it seems like many are facing due to the actions that this group has taken?
Well, I think for some of us who aren't surprised by the events of the Capitol today, I don't think it really takes away from for those of us who have been in the trenches and who have seen the day-to-day struggles of Americans of all types and stripes, but especially particularly the challenges of people of color, and I think it's just, I don't think it's taken away. I think it has given people more resolve in a way, because they really have, and a lot of people say that, as you're right, that the response, the anger that we saw from, I think, those just armed, insurrectionists essentially on the state capitol was a result of what they saw in Georgia, the sort of mobilization that they saw of people of color in Georgia to change the destiny and fate of this country. Those folks have a tremendous amount of privilege on the Capitol. They were able to show up and go inside offices and not be touched, essentially. And I'm even worried about their ability to even be prosecuted for the actions that they did. And I think that, it was one of those things where they sort of felt that they could get away with this and that this country belongs only to them. And I think that was the major message that I think a lot of people took out of that today. But me and lots of other people counter back very clearly and just say, of course not. America has always been all of ours from day one, and that there was no other point in American history where there was not always other groups that have always made this country as great as it is. And even myself, I can go back almost 2 centuries of my African American ancestors here, in part some Native American ancestors here, whose blood is was mixed with this red Georgia clay. So once you know that, once you feel that sense of understanding that this country is mine also, I look at the individuals today as they are, just common terrorists and common thugs. So and I don't think for me it doesn't dissuade me at all. And I think for a lot of other people, especially those who have really down here in Georgia who have really pushed to change the state in lots of ways, I don't think it's going to hopefully sway them. So.
Yeah, no, I completely understand, and I'm trying not to bring the news too much to what happened earlier, just
Mm,
for the fact that I think right now we should be trying to focus on what happened in Georgia. I think
mm,
this is a huge watershed moment in U.S. history that we can see that is probably going to have after effects throughout the next probably decade or
mm,
longer.
mm,
I think it's been so long since Georgia has ever leaned more progressive. And I think right now, seeing that not only has Georgia flipped blue for a national election for the president, both now the senators for Georgia are also blue as well.
mhm,
I think, again, to me, I believe that this is a movement forward where Georgia's now not, like we said, I think just the other time we broadcasted, Georgia now is going to be one of those swing states where usually it
yeah,
wasn't. It wasn't really, but now people are going to be watching Georgia. It's always going to be a state that's on people's minds because of how close it can be. And unfortunately, it shows how divided the
mm,
country can be and how divided the state is. But at the same time, it shows the hard work that, for example, Stacey Abrams and many groups that the Democrats and herself put together to really break down and tear away the voter suppression that has caused so many Georgian residents, but also to tear away the racism and the black voter suppression that's also happened in Georgia as well, and to help get people, minorities, especially within Georgia, set up to vote, getting their credentials and everything set up. And I think, I was watching and reading this web article just
mhm,
earlier, and it was talking about the future and what Republicans are probably going to do moving forward. And I wanted to bring this up with you, and
mm,
I know
mm,
this is on the spot, but I was what the journalists and what the interviewees were talking about was how most likely in the next coming term, so probably
mm,
when Warnock comes back in 2 years to rerun for his position, or another Democrat or another Republican, it's going to be a lot harder for Democrats, and maybe this isn't just even in Georgia, this could be nationally, to
mhm,
do mail-in ballots. The credentials, the requirements to send in mail-in ballots will be a lot more difficult because, unfortunately, with Democrats, it's been a known pattern that it's hard to get them to go out and vote on election day. And that is one thing the Republicans have had going for them, that they do go out and vote on election day, and they go out in droves.
mhm,
With Democrats, it's been usually they do early voting, mail-in voting. But before the pandemic, there wasn't really as much access to early voting and mail-in voting
mhm,
as there was until this election. So moving forward, though, there's been all these theories and ideas that probably the Republican group and community is going to make it so much harder for Democrats to, or for anyone really, to get access to mail-in votes, and that it won't be in a sense where they'll tell them no, but that they'll have to jump through multiple hoops and rings. And for people in a minority community, especially those who are barely able to even now get themselves
mm.
registered to vote, on top of also being able to get a mail-in ballot, in the next coming terms, that may be something that will put a monkey wrench in the voting process. Unfortunately, it sounds like that's something that you wouldn't want to see, a Democratic, union do to itself, because you want all voices to be heard. But at the same time, it's fear that that the reality that Democrats, if they are allowed to vote, can overpower the Republican numbers, as we've seen in this entire election, with especially
Yes,
with Joe Biden getting a 7 million vote
yes.
lead on President Trump. So, what do you think about all of that, Brad? I know I just talked for a big
No,
minute, but
you're
your
fine.
thoughts
You're
on that?
fine. You're great. No, at the when the early voting started for the November election, I saw a like a cartoon, and it was a political cartoon, and it was because of all the traditional voter tactics. It was, what was the best way to put it? It was almost like there were so many African Americans climbing. It was the cartoon climbing over a wall that the actual wall itself did not matter anymore.
Mhm.
And I think that's really what the case was. People wanted to vote so much and so intensely that, because all these voter repression tactics depend on, you know making people, depressing the vote by depressing morale, and by depressing morale, you don't get people out there, or you hit people's blind spots for education or information or awareness. That did not happen this election, because people, after 4 years of Donald Trump, had realized there's nothing in this world that was going to stop them from voting, and that's what happened in the early Georgia votes. when early voting started last August and September. I think that the battle for Georgia has begun. If I'm going to say anything, the battle for Georgia has begun, and it's going to be here for a while. Not just for Georgia. Now that other people are looking at Georgia, you have other activists in Alabama and Mississippi who are thinking about what are ways to engage those populations there, because they've got the numbers. Look at the Democratic primary. When those voters were engaged, that changed the Democratic race, period. So if it can change the Democratic race, period, why can't it change the general election? Of course it can. If Joe Biden would not be the nominee if it wasn't for the black voters of South Carolina, the black voters of Georgia, primary voters, the black voters of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, he would not be the nominee today. And I think that for in the future, and again, we have to also look at places like North Carolina. North Carolina has also a large population. It's very similar demographically to Georgia. North Carolina has been blue before, has went blue for Obama, but has been red the past two incarnations. And so people are really going to be fighting for North Carolina again, I think, using Georgia tactics to do so. So I think this has just begun. There will be fights on both sides, and but I think now that the awareness is there and the infrastructure is there, that there's enough to push back against any potential voter repression tactics.
Brett, I want to bring us really quick to the geography of Georgia and talk a little bit about how that played in this election. So specifically, in previous years, usually the rural areas are very far red. And then, and we're actually bringing this up on the screen now. This is a live map of the New York Times area. And we can see different areas. Are you able to see this pretty well, or do I need to
yes, I can see it.
Can I make it bigger? Is that better?
Maybe bigger for the audience, yeah.
Great. Okay. So yeah, here what we can see is the rural areas, especially in this election, extremely red. Then we get to the major cities: Atlanta, Athens, Augusta, Savannah, Macon, and Columbus, all heavy blue.
Macon, yeah.
Macon, sorry,
yeah.
Macon.
Macon, bacon, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Macon, bacon. That's a great one. But but even looking at the red zones, we still see that Ossoff has still got a blue support, even all the way up to 30% in some of these heavy red areas. Was this normal, or is this what got him the election? It seems like instead of it being 100% red, it was more mixed.
Very few of those red counties in Georgia are all white conservative Trump voters. You have a large African American population in these places that range from 20 to almost 40% of the population. Go down to a place like go to the South. Actually, well, I was in Bullitt County. You can go back to Bullitt County. Bullitt County is a little bit different because that's much more of a rural county. That's where I did an interview with Donald Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle, and I saw Perdue. That was earlier in the year, and that's more of like an exurb of Savannah. But again, you see that John Ossoff did pretty well there. That's right south of Statesboro, again, which has a pretty decent black population. But go to the southern part. Go to their red counties in the southern part. Go down to Lowndes County. Go down and make a little bit more to the other side. There. That's Valdosta. Look at that. 43% John Ossoff. Valdosta, again, all those counties have go to the next one, which should be Brooks. On the other side of Lowndes.
Another 40%, pretty much.
And then the next should be Thomas County. And then the next county should be Grady County. The next one should be Decatur County. And so those are all look at those. Those are huge numbers for Democrats in supposedly red counties of Georgia. And John Ossoff was in Decatur County. He was in Thomas County, and he was in Lowndes County. And again, he brought out significant numbers. Those areas, those are where my people are from. And those areas, again, have significant large black populations that have been there a very long time, since the Civil War. So, but now they've been able to be, like I said, harnessed and their votes listened to. I know a lot of people that just did not vote for decades. I've known people who were in their 50s and 60s, and this is a sad thing to say, this election was the first election they ever voted in.
Oh,
even with Barack, this was the first election, and these are people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Some. There was one 80-year-old woman who had never voted before this election, and that's in those areas. A lot of those areas.
Well, Brad, I think one of the biggest things, and I mentioned this just last night in a previous broadcast, and that has to deal with the Trump effect. In the last 4 years of President Trump taking over office, nonprofits, elections, everything from all over, from local to national, we've seen everything extremely boost up in activity, and that's just mostly because of the effect that he's had on the nation. Whether that the Republicans might say is a positive effect, or the Democrats that say that it's a negative effect, no matter what, you can see is people have gone out to be active within their communities. Nonprofits have seen a surge in donations, in volunteer time, from usually Democrats or people who are more on the moderate side that say they want to try and oppose or do whatever they can to help go against whatever Trump's doing. So, especially with working at the borders, with helping the children that have been separated at the camps in the borders, that was one of the highlights he did. The wall, etc., stuff like that, providing relief and aid to those people. On other things, though, even looking at the election, in Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, the amount of people that went out to vote was high, and then compared to now, even more people went out to
Mm,
vote. It's just seeing the effect that he's had on politics has moved from just the patriarch, old father, middle-aged man, is involved, to now the entire family, everyone's involved. It doesn't even matter what gender, race, ethnicity
mm,
you are. Everyone was involved
yeah.
because people have realized that the effects of what Donald Trump has caused is not just to one, but it's to all. Um, and I believe, just even looking at this and like what you said, with the people that this is the first time they voted because they realized the critical need to go and vote. And I think this is a great transition to the next topic I want to ask you about, which is moving forward. What does this
Mm.
mean for the rest of the country? What does this mean for the Democratic administration, the Biden administration, that's now going to be in charge in the next 2 weeks after his inauguration on the 20th? Now that the Democrats own both the House and the Senate, after President or Vice President-elect Kamala Harris makes her a vote.
Well, I think this is a mandate now. This allows Joe Biden to be able to push forward with some of the major policy agenda issues that he was dealing with, and that's whether it be COVID-19, getting that back under control. That's getting these vaccination efforts underway, which have been faltering nationwide, which is dealing with sort of pushing back against some of the education challenges that have been under Betsy DeVos for the past 4 years. That's dealing with the economy, that's getting our allies overseas, getting sort of trust back in the U.S. again. So there's lots of things now that he can do that he would not have been able to do. And I think when Mitch McConnell didn't push for the $2,000 check situation, I think that hurt Republicans in a huge way, because I think they assumed they'd have these two seats on lock here in Georgia. And I know for a fact that 10 to 15 people have told me that they would not have voted if he had just let those checks go through. That they, for whatever reason, even with Donald Trump, they just assumed other people. But something about it angered so many people that they went out there to vote simply because of that. And so, again, these are, I think now there's a mandate going forward, and I think people will hopefully be. The thing is, though, you have, like everything, you have to hold everyone accountable. Even with that mandate going forward, there are still a lot of challenges, a lot of people that have to be dealt with on the more far progressive aspect of the Democratic side, and those that are in the middle. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe, as we say here in Georgia. But I think that the work has just begun. I hope
Right.
that people celebrate and sort of have their reflection, but I don't think there's much time to do that. There's a lot of work to be done. I think we've made great mistakes before. We're celebrating milestones and then slinking away.
Mhm.
And then, we almost got thrown off a cliff. So I think we cannot make that mistake again. We have to see, okay, great, we won now. Democrats won now, get to work. Get to work. So I think that's the biggest thing.
And Brad, I think you're completely right on that. And I think that's a big thing that Democrats and all people, everyone in the country needs to remember that it just doesn't end at the election. It continues past that. And as
Yeah.
we've seen in previous years, right after the election, usually the amount of activism usually stops. But again, in this last 4 years, as I just said, with the Trump effect in, taking its, course, people didn't stop. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why the buildup of 4 years to now has really gotten people out to go and vote and motivated people to go and vote. But
Yeah.
then, but then at the same time, that's also turned into what we saw earlier today, going back to the Capitol with the siege on the Capitol. These emotions that have been, you know, just really been on high. But I
Yes.
wanted to thank you so much for being here with me today, Brad. I know
Sure.
we're going to be cutting it around right now. Thank you. If you had any final things to say for any viewers out there who want to know a little bit more about Georgia, or just
Sure.
any final thoughts, feel free to say anything.
Well, sure. Yeah, I have an article on Georgia Public Broadcasting, which is about the Black Belt of Georgia. And I'll be doing some more reporting on there over the next few weeks. And yeah, I mean, if you have any questions, hit you up or hit me up, perhaps, but hit you up is your show. Hit you up, and and yeah, and just get the four of them over. That'd be great to me. So that'd be fun.
Well, everyone, I hope you had a great time watching the review today with myself and Brad. Brad, again, is an amazing reporter out in Georgia. He's also in New York as well. I recommend to follow, subscribe Brad on all his social media and here on Happs as well. And I'm sure you'll enjoy all of the content and articles that he produces as a freelance reporter. Thank you again for watching the review.
Thank you, Marco. How was that?